Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth and the last webinar for the season at Fall 2021 Social Entrepreneurship for Innovation in Health course. In line with this week's module on co-creation for idea pitching and development, we will learn the formula of how to pitch a new idea from our guest expert for the session today. Today, we are going to follow a slightly different session format wherein our guest expert is going to walk us through the process of idea pitching, and we will do a small demo of a sample pitch in the end. But before we get started, as you all know, please take the survey that you can see below the screen if you're watching us live. You get extra credit points to watch us live. Also, please don't forget to drop your question in the discussion forum so that we can have them addressed during the span of the session. So I'm very pleased to welcome our guest expert for today, Mr. Mark Cheng, who is Ashoka's Senior Advisor for Social Finance. He is an investment banker who has facilitated millions of dollars of investment into social ventures. Today, he will run us through a small workshop for next 35 minutes and will tell us how to pitch an idea. And we will do a small example of the pitch on Ashoka Fellow Simon Berry's innovation of last mile distribution. Welcome, Mark, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Andrani. It's great to be here, and hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Mark, you're an expert in social finance and you've done so many investment pitches that we're very excited to learn from you some of the best tips. But before we get into your workshop, I have two quick questions for you. First of all, Mark, can you share briefly about your very rich professional journey and what is your motivation to work as a social financing expert?
Sure. So I began my career as an investment banker, as you mentioned, and spent about 15 years working in different roles, financing different types of projects around the world. And then for me, the big shift came around 2008, immediately following the financial crisis. And what that crisis did was it prompted me to really ask the question, what did I want to do with my career, and how could I use my skills in a way that would really, work with my values around that time, what I was doing was that I was working with a number of different social entrepreneurs, and I came across Ashoka at that time. And Ashoka, of course, is this preeminent network globally of incredible social entrepreneurs who are doing incredible things. And as a volunteer with Ashoka, what I began doing was to help one or two of the founders of these social sector startups to put together their business plans and then to pitch to investors and raise investment. And it was on the back of those projects in 2008, 2009, that I began to see that there was actually a huge need on the part of the social sector for these kinds of skills. So I set up a consultancy and later an investment fund that would support and help these kinds of projects. And I've been doing that ever since. So for the last more than 10 years now, working with Ashoka and its fellows and social entrepreneurs all over the world, but particularly in Africa and Southeast Asia, with different projects ranging from healthcare to fighting climate change through to agriculture. And really what motivates me is just the power of seeing these incredible new innovations take root and succeed and scale up and really change livelihoods and economies and improve the lives of so many millions of people around the world. So it's been a great privilege for me to witness that explosion of social enterprise over the last decade, and to play a role in being able to bring more capital in to support these incredible projects.
Thank you. That was an incredible journey. And I must say that your efforts to make social ventures investable is commendable. Mark, you have seen numerous social entrepreneurs and nonprofits pitch their ideas, and you have also helped them raise so many dollars, millions of dollars for their ventures. You have also worked with social entrepreneurs to help them take their idea to the next level. What is the difference between pitching of an entrepreneurial project and that of an entrepreneurial project?
Yeah, so I think the differences perhaps are not as great as you might expect. So at the end of the day, you're doing the same thing with a pitch, whether you are an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're selling your idea on how to solve a social problem to an audience, right? And you have to do the same thing. You have to tell your story in a compelling way. You have to explain the benefits of what you're bringing, and you have to persuade people to mobilize resources in your favor. So whether that audience is an external one, in other words, whether you're an entrepreneur who is basically trying to raise capital from outside investors, or whether you are an entrepreneur who has to persuade perhaps your local corporate committee or internal team to allocate resources to you and to support you, you still got to use the same persuasion skills. Still got to tell an incredible story. The differences might be in the kind of resources that you're looking for. So with an external audience, it's predominantly capital. With an internal audience, it will be internal budget, but it might also be access to resources, pro bono, different departments, and so on. And so you will have to navigate what that ask is. The other difference might be that you probably have an advantage being an entrepreneur over being an entrepreneur, because you're already hopefully embedded inside a team, which means that presumably that team is rooting for your success and is already very well disposed towards you. So if you're able to use your relationships, your connections within your organization in order to be able to present an exciting idea for that organization, you should start with the wind at your back. You should start with a lot of support from colleagues and who are rooting for your success. So I think entrepreneurship is a fantastic way to bring new ideas to market because of that. You're starting already with an advantage from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really great. I think that's very important, that the outcomes expected in both cases is support. So thank you for that insight. Thank you, Mark. And now the screen is all yours. And I'm here to support you with anything that you need during your presentation. And to all the participants, we will be taking questions as soon as Mark concludes his workshop. So please keep your question coming in the discussion forum. Mark.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run a little sort of mini experiment, and it's maybe a little bit different from the webinars that you've seen previously, in that this one is going to be very hands-on and practical. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you sitting, at home or in your office or wherever you are watching this, to actually come, work along with us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to present you a small part of a workshop that I have run for many hundreds of entrepreneurs looking to raise investment. And, so this has been tested many times over by different teams around the world. And it seems to be a very sort of successful set of tools that people have found very helpful in how to pitch your idea, how to pitch your new idea. So I'm curious to see how you find it, and would love to get your feedback in due course on this, as well as any questions that you might have. Feel free to let Indrani and the team know. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yep. Okay, great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move it to share screen. Okay, and so the topic of this little workshop is called How to Pitch Your Impact, or how to pitch a new idea. And the way it works is as follows. Having observed hundreds of entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs pitch their idea, it seems that over time, what we've observed is that there is a kind of a classic pitch narrative. There is a certain order in how to tell your story in a way that investors find very compelling and very effective. And the reason for that is because that order has been tested over time, and it seems to answer the questions that investors have about your project in the order in which it arises, if they know nothing about what you're doing. Okay, and this is the sequence. So essentially what it is you start by talking about the problem that you're working on, and then you talk about the insight that you've got into how to solve that problem, and then you bring up the solution that you've got. Okay, so problem, insight, solution is the natural sequence to open a pitch. Then what you do is you explain the impact of your pitch, of your idea. Okay, so you describe the solution, and then you explain why that solution is very effective, why it's very impactful. And then finally, you conclude by giving your plan for how you're going to take that idea and scale it up and grow it and bring it to market, essentially. And then finally, and at the end, and only at the end, do you actually give your ask. Okay, what do you actually want from this audience? How much capital are you looking for? what form of capital, and so on. So you leave the ask until the end. You don't lead it with it. And what you do is you have to take them on this little journey, okay? Starting off with the problem, and then the insight, and then solution, and then the impact, the plan, and the ask. And if you can hit these 6 beats in your presentation, you're basically you're spoon feeding the answers to the audience, to the investor, in a way that's going to make it very, very easy for them to understand. Because most projects are very difficult, right? They're complicated. There's a lot going on. And so you don't want to drown the audience in detail, nor do you want to give them anything which is non-essential, nor do you want to give them anything which is in the wrong sequence, right? If I started by telling you what my ask is, and you don't even know what the problem is, you're not going to be very interested in what I'm about to say, right? Or similarly, if I start telling you about my product, but you've got no idea what the context of the product is, that's not very helpful either. So there's a certain sequence that kind of makes sense for how to do this. And so what Indrani and I are going to do now in the next 30 minutes is we're actually going to walk you through an example of how an entrepreneur might make a pitch. And what I'm going to invite you to do is, as we go along and make this pitch, and you see how the pitch is constructed, I would like you to take your project and see whether at home you can actually do the same thing. So as I ask questions to Indrani, for example, just have a think what might be your version of the answer in your particular case, and see whether this method, will actually help you to create a fantastic pitch as well. So, Indrani, if you're willing to be the test subject on this, and we'll give it a go. Yes. We actually haven't done this before, so we're gonna try it out, but hopefully this is going to work. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so what I said was that the way you should start your pitch is as follows. Talk about the problem that you're working on, give your unique insight into how to solve that problem, and then finally present the solution that you got, whatever it might be, okay, in the context of the insight that you've just given. So it's problem, insight, and solution. However, one of the things that I've observed from having tried to work with many people on this is that they really struggle. They really, really struggle, even if you know your product really well, to actually distill the insight that you've got into and the problem that you're actually working on. These are quite abstract concepts, right? So it's not easy for people to actually just naturally say, oh, the problem is this, right? Because there are so many problems that you could be addressing, right? Is it climate change? Is it an aspect of climate change? Is it one feature of the supply chain for your particular industry, or the fact that there's a certain demand problem, whatever it might be, right? There's a lot of different ways you can unpack it. And so I want to give you a little method for how to do this. But let me just quickly explain what I mean by problem, insight, and solution. So the essence, basically, of whether you will succeed or not in your pitch is basically whether you'll be able to explain to an audience well enough what is your unique insight into the problem that you're trying to solve, okay? So one of the things that I always tell entrepreneurs is you're not actually pitching a product. What you're actually pitching is your unique insight, okay? It's your kind of secret sauce. And what do I mean by that? An insight is basically an understanding of why a problem exists and therefore how it can be solved, okay? So insight equals why plus how, okay? And if you can convince me that you've got a deep insight, which is unique, which nobody else has thought about into how to solve a particular problem, that is how you secure investment from investors. Okay, so as I said, well, let's go through this step by step and give this a go. But it's very, very hard for people, as I mentioned, to come up and say, okay, my insight is ... So what I've done is I'm going to give you a simple method of how to unpack it, right, and do this. And the example, and this is one that Indrani's picked, is a project called Cola Life, founded by a brilliant entrepreneur, Simon Berry, in Zambia, and his team. And it's a husband and wife team, Simon and Cheng, who both launched this project about 8 years ago. So remember, the story we're going to try and construct now is problem, insight, and solution for Cola Life, okay? And here's an easy way to work this out. Here's an easy way to do this. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Indrani 4 questions. And the answers to those 4 questions will essentially be the template for the pitch that we're going to construct. Okay, so Indrani, are you ready for this? Let's give it a go. So my first question is really basic. Just tell me, what is, in 1 or 2 sentences, what is the product or service that you are trying to bring to market?
So the product is Cola Life, inspired by Coca-Cola's distribution system. Cola Life is an oral rehydration salt used to treat diarrhea, and administering this salt needs no medical supervision. So it's a rehydration salt.
It's a rehydration salt. Okay, fine. So that's all we need at this point in time. Okay, so it's just 2 or 3 sentences. Tell me what the product is and what does it do. Okay, and that's exactly what Indrani has just described. So this is the product. It's called the Cola Life Anti-Diarrhea Kit, and you can see it here on the screen. Okay, it's a very small sachet of this thing called an oral rehydration salt. And originally it's called Cola Life because it was designed to fit into the spaces between Coca-Cola bottles being transported in a crate, and that as a wonderful way to get this medicine, to villages all across Zambia. So that's the little history on the story of Cola Life. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to build a pitch for this product, this oral rehydration salt, which is used to combat the problem of diarrhea, okay, in Africa. Okay, so my next question then is, so, okay, you described to me what this oral rehydration salt is. It's a medicine, okay? It fixes a very, very common problem, which is a major killer of young infants in particular. And Andrani, tell me, what is different about your product or service? What do you do differently from either the competition or from what existing customers are paying for right now?
So Cola Life offers this medication in sachets, and the sachets really cost very low. It's just 5 cents. And these are actually sold in corner shops in local community in remote Zambia, against the medicine which is actually only available in clinics, and the clinics are really almost very far, about 100 miles away from the villages in remote Zambia. And in the clinics, it is sold in bulk. So the medicine becomes quite unaffordable for people coming from low-income group communities.
Okay, fantastic. So notice basically what I'm doing with this question, right? I'm asking the entrepreneur, what is it that you do differently from your competition or from other people? And what we're doing with this question is that we're trying to unpack the unique insight that is the center of the innovation that you're bringing, okay? So basically, every new product, by definition, is doing something differently. And the reason that you're doing something differently is because you have some insight embedded in that difference about how you could solve a problem better than other people, right? What is your edge on the competition? Well, it's this, right? So in the case of Cola Life, what Andrani's basically said is, well, what we do is we sell it in small sachets, right? So these small little packets, right, that cost less than 5 cents, right? And we don't sell it in clinics, we sell it in local corner stores where the person who lives in a rural Zambian village might actually go, right? So what we're doing is we're talking here about the customer orientation, and we're explaining the unique features of this product or service in a way which is going to bring out the innovation, right? And that's what we're going to try and get down to, okay? So my follow-up question, what do you do differently, is my first question. My second question then is, why do you do it differently, right? You just told me that you sell it in sachets rather than in bulk. You've just told me you sell it in a corner store rather than in a clinic, okay? So those are 2 very fundamental features that are different from the competition, right? Let's understand why you do it that way. So Indrani, over to you.
Yes, the main reason why we do it differently is because, as I said, in the clinics, it is sold in bulk. So sometimes just you need a very small quantity. Even then you have to buy that bulk, which is not affordable by the low-cost community members. And these clinics are really, really far. So sometimes people don't even reach there. And the timeliness of the medicine is also another factor. So if people find it in the corner stores at an affordable price, they are likely to use it more. So what we are doing is the distribution is the difference that and it's inspired by Coca-Cola's distribution system. So that's what we are doing differently.
Okay, perfect. So basically, I mean, Andrani's answer is, look, existing methods of distributing medicine just don't work, okay? The current medicine doesn't reach people. It's sold in bulk in clinics. But the average clinic is 100 miles away from a rural village, right, in Zambia. So no one's going to go there, okay? And even if they went there, they couldn't afford the medicine anyway because it's sold in large volume rather than the tiny little sachets that people actually need. Okay, so what we've got here is a really good diagnosis of the problem, right? Why is the current solutions not working? Because they're at the wrong quantity in the wrong places at the wrong price point. Okay, so what we've got here is a really good, unique insight into why the current system isn't working. Okay, and so what we do is we get to that insight in these 3 steps. Firstly, tell me what your product is, right? Everyone can do that. Then tell me what is unique about that product, or what is different about that product. We sell it in small quantities at a very low price in a corner store, not in the clinic, okay? And then finally, with the why question, why do you do it like that? We get to the unique insight, because the current way of doing it doesn't work, right? Sell it in clinics, no one's going to go there. They're too far away and they're too intimidating and people are not going to walk in that door, okay? And that essentially is your 1, 2, 3 answer. We have now unpacked from the product to the insight into why that product exists. What is the unique insight into that? And so my final question to Indrani, just to get us to the top level, is, so tell me what exactly is the problem that your innovation is designed for? What is the problem that you're solving? How bad is the problem? How big is the problem?
So this solution, or these sachets, are actually for diarrhea. Diarrhea is the second largest cause of death for children under 5 years. And the deaths are really only because of delays in administering the treatments. Almost 500,000 children every year die because of this, and most of them come from sub-Saharan African countries.
Okay, so that is actually almost perfect problem statement. Okay, it tells me there's a major problem in the world, which is diarrhea. It is a major killer of infants, and we have this metric here, which gives me the size of the problem: 500,000 infants every year. Okay, and then it follows up with what I call the severity metric, which basically tells me how bad is this problem, right? And that's the 98% figure that you see here in this slide. So we have this major disease. It's killing a huge number of young infants every year. And the tragedy of this disease is that 98% of these deaths are actually totally preventable, right? If we could only get this simple oral rehydration salt to that child would live, okay? And the absurdity of this problem is that oral rehydration salt is not even a very difficult medicine. It's not like a vaccine or anything, right? It's literally a combination of salt, zinc, and water, right? Mixed in the right combination, stops diarrhea and saves a life, right? So it's a very, very serious problem. It's not being addressed correctly, and Cola Life has identified what the problem is. It's the supply chain. It's the distribution of these products. It's not being done in the right way, and therefore they've designed a product which addresses that question. Okay, so that essentially is how you would open a pitch. You would use these questions to unlock an answer. And then what you do is you would then use that to sort of tell your story, okay? But remember what I said. I said the order of the story is problem, then insight, then solution, okay? Now what we've just done is we've gone solution, insight, problem, because that's easier for most entrepreneurs to work with, right? It's much easier to tell me what your product is and then tell me why it's different, and then tell me what the problem is that you're trying to solve, than to go the other way around, right? So the 3 questions are, number 1, what is your product or service? That's the solution. Number 2, what do you do differently from other people? Why do you do it that way? Okay, that's your unique insight. And then finally, and so what's the problem that you're solving, right? That's the problem statement, okay? So if we take Indrani's answers to those 3 questions and we now reverse the order in which we gave them, we should have the opening to our perfect pitch. We should have the problem, we should have the insight, and we should then have a solution which makes sense given the insight, okay? So let's just play it back and see whether that's actually correct. Okay, here's the problem. Diarrhea kills 500,000 infants every single year. It's the biggest cause of malnutrition and the second leading cause of death in young people. And the tragedy is that it's 98% preventable, right? All you need is a very simple combination of oral rehydration salts which cost only a few cents, which would actually save those lives. So what's going wrong? Well, what's going wrong is that existing medicine doesn't reach the people who need it, right? Existing medicine is sold in bulk in clinics, but the average clinic is 100 miles away from a rural village. So no one will go there, and nor could they afford the medicine even if they did. So we have to find a different way to get the medicine to people in the way that is actually affordable, manageable, and local to them. And that's exactly what we do. We have designed a product called the Cola Life Anti-Diarrhea Kit. It's specially designed for people who live in rural villages. It's sold in small packets in the local corner shop, so there's no need to go to a clinic. And it costs less than 5 cents a sachet, which is enough to save a child's life. And that is our product. Okay. And so that is basically the opening of the pitch. Can you see how the story, the narrative just makes a lot of sense? It flows very coherently from the problem that you define to the insight into what's going wrong, and then finally into your solution. And it sort of leads naturally into your solution. And of course it does, because we started off with a solution and then reverse engineered the narrative. Okay, so I'm hoping that this will work for you with your product or service, whatever it is that you're wanting to pitch and bring to market. Just try that little exercise. Just describe what the product is, right? Then explain the insight into why you're doing it in a unique way. And then finally, what's the problem that you've got? And then take those, reverse the order, and that's your problem, insight, and solution. Okay, so that's how you would open a pitch. And my advice is that if you can construct your story in that way, that's the first 5 minutes of your pitch, but you've actually already done 80% of the work. Because if you can tell it as compellingly as that, the audience is now very, very warm to you, right? They believe in the story. They recognize there's a serious problem. They've seen that you've identified a very credible insight into how to fix the problem. And they've seen that your product embodies that insight in a very intelligent way that they can now see why you're doing it like that. Why is it sold in this way? Why is it so small? Why are you selling it so cheaply? Why are you doing it in a corner shop, not in a traditional clinic, right? And it just makes sense, right? So this is first 5 minutes. You will win or lose the pitch based on your ability to tell this narrative in this way: problem, insight, and solution. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to finish off the rest of the pitch, and then you can just see the rest of the narrative. Okay, so what we need to do next, having convinced people there's a big problem, a deep insight, and a credible solution, you've now got to sell the audience on the impact of your idea. Okay, how do you know that your idea is effective and impactful? And so what I want you to do is I want you to hit me with your magic number, as I call it. And the magic number is basically a number or a statistic which just shows how effective your solution is, okay? So if we were to ask Simon and his team, what is the magic number for Cola Life, for example, how do I know that your oral rehydration salt, that sachet, actually is effective? What Simon might say is something like this: well, every kit that we sell costs just 5 cents. And we sell a lot of these kits, right? And what we notice on average is that we're saving one life for every $10 of kits sold, right? Of medicine sold, right? And that's an unbelievable ratio of impact, right? Just $10 and you can save a child's life, right? So if Simon can just give the evidence and then put that on the table, right? He's instantly extremely attractive for investors, because you're telling me that for $10 I can save a life. Suddenly you can see the return on investment or the return on impact as a result of putting these kinds of numbers out there, right? So for your innovation, there probably is some number, and it's usually just one or two numbers that just makes people go, wow, that's a really impressive number, right? With our medicine or with our product, we can treble the number of patients that can be screened. With our product, we can reduce the waiting time by 90%. With our product, we can improve the accuracy of diagnosis by 90%. With our product, we can save the consumer 80% of their costs that they would otherwise have to spend, right? There will be this number that is like an effectiveness number, okay? This is where you put it in the pitch. You put it at this point in time, right? You describe your solution. Now you hit me with this number, And then now we're talking, right? And at this point, if I'm an investor, my only final question is, how much money do you need? Where do I write the check to, right? Okay. There's actually, I'm just kidding. There's two more things you have to do. Okay. The next thing you have to do is you have to tell me your plan. Okay. You told me you got a great product. I believe you. You told me that the product has incredible impact, right? It's super cheap relative to the competition. It's super effective, whatever it might be. So what I need to hear from you now is, what are you going to do with the investment that I'm going to put into you, right? If you're asking me for $1 million, what would you do with the $1 million? Show me how the $1 million is going to help you go from 1,000 customers to 10,000 customers, right? And really grow your impact. So what you do is you give me a plan, and your plan tells me how will you grow, and what are the next steps to grow, right? Oh, we're going to create a factory, and then we're going to sell in Tanzania as well as Zambia. And that will mean that we can increase production from 1,000 to 100,000, right? And then finally, you put a price tag on that plan, and you give me your ask. Okay, and it comes right at the end of this sequence, right? We need $1 million. What will you do with that money? We're going to build a factory. What are you offering investors? We're offering you 20% of the new project in equity. Okay, so how much do you need? What would you do with that money? What are you offering the investor in return? Okay, and that is the sequence of a perfect pitch, what I call a perfect pitch, right? It goes problem, then the insight, then the solution, then the impact of that solution, then your plan, what you can do with the money, and then your ask. So how much money do you actually need? Okay, those are the broad parameters of a generic, well done pitch, and in that sequence as well. Okay, so we've just gone through that really, really quickly in how long was that? 25 minutes or less. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful to this audience. We've actually got 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is, why don't we actually just see that pitch again? Okay. Now that I've gone behind the scenes and shown you how the pitch is built up with those 6 elements, right? Problem, insight, solution, impact, plan, and ask. Okay. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to give you Simon Berry's Coda Life pitch. Okay. And I just want you to judge for yourself how these elements fit together, whether you find it compelling, whether you can see how the story is being told in a way that's really, really effective. Okay, so, and this pitch should be doable in about 2 minutes or less. And I would encourage you to see whether you can create your own 2-minute elevator version of this as well. Okay, so again, I'm just going to give it a go, and we'll just dive into it cold and see whether this works. Okay, so imagine this is the pitch for Coda Life. Okay, so the problem we're trying to address is diarrhea, which kills 500,000 infants every single year, the vast majority of whom live in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. Diarrhea is the biggest cause of malnutrition in infants. It's the second leading cause of death in young people worldwide. And the tragedy of this problem is that 98% of those deaths are actually completely preventable, right? The way you cure diarrhea is with a simple combination of oral rehydration salts, which cost less than a few cents and requires no complexity at all in terms of design. So why are so many young infants dying of this preventable disease? Well, the answer is because the way that we deliver the existing medicine doesn't actually reach the people who need it, right? We sell existing medicine in bulk in clinics, but the average clinic is 100 miles away from a rural village. So no one's going to go there, nor are they going to be able to afford the medicine even if they went. Okay. So what we have done is we've designed a product which is actually designed for people who live in rural villages in Zambia. It's called the Coda Life Anti-Diarrhea Kit. And here you can see it. And what we do is we sell it in small little sachets that cost less than 5 cents per sachet, so that it can be affordable to anyone who needs it. And we don't sell it in clinics that you have to walk hundreds of miles for. We sell them in the local corner shop where the person already goes to buy their local shopping. So it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's in the quantity and the design which is needed by the patient. Okay, our life-saving kit costs less than 10 cents per sachet. And we've worked out that every $10 invested could help us save the life of 1 child. So our impact from rolling out this medicine in this way is absolutely enormous. With your investment, we're looking to raise $1 million to help us reach 10 million infants across sub-Saharan Africa with this life-saving medicine And we believe we can do that in the next 24 months. And so what we need is $1 million invested in us to enable us to create 10 million of these kits, potentially saving 100,000 lives. Okay, and that was it. I don't know, and Johnny, how many minutes was that? It was probably about 3 minutes.
No,
so,
absolutely right? Perfect. Perfect.
That was okay. And so that's it. That is your pitch done in 3 minutes using those 6 elements to the pitch: problem, insight, solution, product, impact, plan, and ask, done in that way. If you can build a pitch around those bare bones, just hitting those beats in that way, that will be a very, very effective way for you to be able to convey the power of what you do to your audience. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna stop there and open it up for any questions. And as I said, this is an exercise we've run with hundreds of entrepreneurs. They found this incredibly helpful, and it seems to work. So highly recommend everyone giving it a go, and hopefully that will help you with your pitch as well. Okay, so I'll stop sharing there and hand it back to Indrani.
Thank you, Mark, and that was absolutely awesome. And you made it sound so simple. So pitching an idea is easy if you know how to do it. Learning how to pitch properly is, I think, one of the skills, whether it's an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, founders, innovators, everybody needs to kind of, develop this skill so that they are kind of able to tap into investors, other stakeholders, co-founders, even attracting talent. So it's a very important job for them to, it's a very important skill. Pitching is a very, very important skill. So thank you so much for explaining it in such simple steps. There are lots of questions coming. So let's take a few of them. The first question that I'm going to take is from Anna Stapp from BI. And Anna is asking, what should not be used in a pitch? In other words, what should we avoid in pitching a new idea?
So that's a great question. So in a pitch, you don't have a lot of time, right? So basically, you have to keep down to the absolute essentials. And the thing that I try to emphasize to people who are making a pitch is that if you're pitching to an audience that knows nothing about you and your project and what you do, the best investor is going to walk away with no more than about 3 to 5 facts that they have remembered from your pitch. Okay, that is pretty much it. So you only want to get the top 3, most important things, conveyed. And so what you mustn't do is you mustn't drown the audience with detail. It is absolutely not the case that the more statistics, the more numbers, the more evidence you have, the better it is, right? So what I encourage people to do is to strip out everything except the most important numbers in your pitch. And if I was to prioritize what I think the most important numbers are, it would be number 1, how big is the problem that you're working on, right? How big is the market for you for this product or service? Number 2, how severe is the customer's pain? Okay, so that's that 98% of people don't, get the medicine, and the number of deaths is enormous, right? So number 2 is the size of the pain. Number 3, I think, is the effectiveness of your solution, right? So, with our product, we can save 1 in 10 lives. With our product, the customer can double the time that it takes, or half the time it takes for them to recover, or whatever it might be, right? There is a number there, which is your statistic for effectiveness, right? Give that number and then almost nothing else, right? Because anything that you add to that is only going to dilute it, right? So therefore, you don't want to be drowning them in detail. So I think those are the 3 big numbers: the size of the problem, the severity of the problem, the quality of your impact, right? And then maybe your growth plan. Maybe it might be, today we're serving 1,000 customers. We want to serve 10,000 in the next 5 years, right? And so where are you going to go to? And then finally, and most importantly, of course, the ask, right? We need $1 million to achieve that growth plan, right? It's an incredible number of people who are actually very cagey on the ask. I think a lot of people who don't pitch regularly find it a bit uncomfortable to make an ask. It's quite nice to tell a story, but at the point where they go, look, I really need $1 million from you, okay, in order to make this happen, or we're not going to reach those kids. You have got to make a big, bold ask on the table. Do not let the audience walk away without knowing exactly what it is that you want from them. $1 million in equity funded into this project in order to help you go from 1,000 to 10,000 patients, right? That is what you need to have. So rather than saying what you shouldn't put in, because there's so much you shouldn't put in, I think you should, just put in those 5 essential numbers and really focus on that if you can. It's very hard to think of any other statistic that is more important than those 5 things that I just mentioned. One final tip just on that, by the way, many of you will have heard that the investors really invest in teams, okay? The team is so important, and so on and so on, right? That is true. However, what a lot of people interpret that as meaning is, tell me the CVs of your people, right? On the team, and they spend 10 minutes doing that, right? This is my COO who spent 50 years at, doing an engineering and blah, 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 right? Don't do that, okay? You have no time to talk about biographies of your team members, right? So all you do is you put up one quick slide which shows the names and faces, right? And then everything else, their CVs and backgrounds, you send to them in the appendix after the pitch is over, right? Don't waste your precious time talking about who's on the team, right? Unless it's very, very critical that you have the world's best patent engineer in this particular topic or whatever. Then of course you talk about Professor so-and-so, right? But if that's not the case, don't spend too much time on your team. Focus on the insight first, then on the impact, and then on the plan, and then the ask. That's the sequence that you should be focused on. Okay.
Great insight. Yes, managing the balance between the elements of a pitch and to keep them relevant is so important. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that. Another learner, Petra, is asking another very interesting question. How can we be sure of which is the unique insight of your idea? What would be the process of discovering the piece that makes your idea unique?
Okay. I think this is going to be very contextual. So there's a reason why you're launching your product and bringing it to market, or your service, right? And very few people launch a product just to do what everyone else is doing. So it's almost the case, inevitably the case, that in the history of doing what you're doing, there's a reason why you're doing it. And that history might be you stumbled upon an insight or a better way of doing it, or you observed that certain customers prefer X and not Y. And that's going to be very particular to the history of the project. So normally it's not that difficult to work out, oh, we're doing something different from other people, and what we're doing is what it is. When I say doing something different, of course, what I'm also referring to is not just the competition, right? Because there may not be any competition for your product or service. What I'm talking about is the status quo. So, currently, so let's take Simon Berry's example, for example, Cola Life, right? I mean, there probably isn't anybody else who is selling sachets of rehydration salts in the same way that he's doing, right? So what he's doing is he's comparing himself with the status quo. He's saying, well, my current patient who has diarrhea in a remote rural Zambian village, right, is not going to be able to get any help, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And what he's comparing it with, he's saying, well, the reason is because the medicine is in a clinic 100 miles away, right? And it's being sold in the wrong quantities at the wrong price. And so, of course, no one's going to go there, okay? So his competition in that sense is not, oh, there's a competitor who's doing it differently and we're better than them. It's rather that the status quo is not working because it compels the patient to trek 100 miles to a clinic, right? And so what I'm doing differently is I'm bringing the solution to them. I'm bringing the product to them at a price point that they can actually afford in a way that they will actually buy. And so that might be your uniqueness. It's actually not, is in comparison with the existing way that things are being done. And so what you want to do is you want to look at what your customer is actually doing right now to address that problem. And then looking at what your product brings to the table. And then basically coming up with, well, our product is different because we do it cheaper, faster, closer, whatever it might be. So competition here is with the status quo, not just with the competitor. And I'm very confident that you'll be able to find, lots of ways in which you're uniquely better than the status quo.
Okay, great, Mark. Thank you so much. Mark, we are going to take 2 last questions. The first one I'm going to take, 2 last questions from our learners. I'm going to take one question which many participants are asking. What about elevator pitches? What if you have just a minute to kind of pitch and to gain someone's attention?
Yeah. So I think if you're going to do an elevator pitch, what I would recommend is just simply doing the first half of what I've just described. So problem, insight, solution. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry about the plan and the ask and all of that. But what you want to do is you're in an elevator with an investor, and you've got 1 minute to basically say to wow them, right? So I think the elements that we discussed in the problem, insight, and solution is the way of doing that. And again, just focus on those 3 big numbers that I mentioned: the size of the problem, the severity of the problem, and then the impact of the solution that you bring. If you just did a pitch which just gave those ABC numbers, size, severity, and impact, in many cases you can be very impressive in 1 sentence. Diarrhea kills 500,000 infants in sub-Saharan Africa every year. 98% of those infants aren't getting medicine that they need in a form that actually serves them. Small sachets delivered to them locally. That's what we do. We save 100,000 lives a year, right? End of story. Okay, less than 1 minute, and if somebody had just met you in an elevator and you just said that, and they were looking to invest in healthcare solutions, the next I would be then, if I was them, I'd be saying, tell me more, or how can I get your contact details, because I want to know what you're doing. So I would go for those 3 numbers, compress them into 30 seconds, and focus on it that way.
Great. Mark, I have a set of questions for you before we wrap up, in interest of wrapping up on time. But before that, I'd like to take one of the last questions from one of our learners, Olga Drapalova. And Olga is asking, how do you cope with possible failures? What all-round advice you could provide on this topic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in some ways, so I approach things from an investor's perspective, right? I am an investor myself, and so one of the things that you learn very quickly about investment is that failure is inevitable. It is absolutely inevitable. The best investors, expect that more than half the projects in their portfolio will fail within 5 years, right? And so there is nothing embarrassing or wrong about failure. It is just part of life. It is just part of the expectation. And the best that you can do is just try and improve the odds slightly in your favor. So firstly, if failure is not a problem in that sense, it's not an existential problem that a lot of people seem to think it is, right? Secondly, so what the investor mindset and the entrepreneur's mindset, it is really more like an inventor's mindset. Okay. And this is the difference, I think, between being an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur than being, let's say, a corporate manager of a large corporation. If you're running a large corporation, what you're doing is you're running something which is already proven and successful, right? And so, basically, your only failure is you're screwing up something that's already proven, right? But that's not how entrepreneurs think. Because by definition, if you're an entrepreneur bringing a product to market, you don't know whether it's going to succeed or not, right? So what you're actually doing is you're running an experiment. And just as Thomas Edison had to, build 1,000 light bulbs and 99% of them didn't work before the final one did, you're going to be doing that as an entrepreneur. You're going to be running lots of experiments. And there's no such thing as a failure with an experiment. There's just a lesson that you've learned that helps you iterate and get to the next version, right? And so as an entrepreneur, don't think of it as failure. Think of it as experimentation, giving you feedback, which enables you to refine and improve. And as an investor, you don't think of it as failure. You think of it as, experiment. I backed that solution and that doesn't seem to be working. Therefore, I learned that, and as long as you can learn why it failed, then you can improve and come back for the next one, right? So I think it's very important to constantly be running a set of diagnostics where you're going, did this fail because I had a bad product? Did it fail because the price point was wrong? Did it fail because I sold it in the wrong way? My marketing wasn't good enough, right? If you can emerge from that, understanding what experiment you ran that didn't work out. Oh, we had the right product at the right price point, but we were selling it in clinics. We should have been selling it in shops. We had the right delivery, but nobody wants to pay $10 for this product. You're starting to zone in on how to get better and how to improve. So experimenter's mindset, coupled with constant learning and iteration, is how I would reframe it in a way that just means that not a problem for you. It's just a stepping stone on the way to ultimately getting it right.
Great response. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. And in interest of time, I would just like to ask you a concluding question. Do you have any parting advice for our learners of the course for them to be successful in their efforts? And also, please share a little bit about your programs and your tools and how our learners can connect with you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, in terms of advice, I mean, one of the things that I can say as somebody who's both supporting entrepreneurial teams and also investing in entrepreneurial teams is that I think we're at a pretty extraordinary moment in history. I personally cannot remember a time when there has been so much capital flowing into early stage projects, to help them get off the ground and succeed. Coupled with such an extreme need as we've had, in our COVID world, that we're living in right now. So my advice is, I think it's an incredible time to be an entrepreneur or to be an entrepreneur, right? I mean, people are so ready now to think differently and invest differently in very radically different solutions. And so, there's no better time to be doing what you're doing or thinking about what you're planning to do. So be bold, absolutely jump in and get going. And as I said, I think the point that I just made, there is no such thing as failure. There is only rapid iteration to get ideas into the market as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And we need that desperately. I'm working with entrepreneurs, in East Africa right now, trying to think about the supply chain for pharmaceuticals or the last mile distribution, as we've seen with Cola Life. And the pace of innovation is extraordinary. So it's a great time to be doing this. We're meeting this moment when there is capital available, an openness to new business models, and unbelievable new technologies coming into the market that can radically influence, our ability to put products out there, even to the base of the pyramid. Communities earning less than $2 a day, we can now do this, and so what a great time to be getting involved. So congratulations to everyone who's thinking about this and planning it. I honestly can't think of a better time to be doing this. And in terms of resources, what I'm doing nowadays is very much focused on providing tools like the one that you've just seen to coach entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs in how to bring products to market effectively and get them funded. And we've just put up a website called Social Innovation Circle. So anyone can go to it. It's socialinnovationcircle.com. And if you go there, we regularly post all kinds of resources that you can use, all kinds of tools that you can use. We publish the latest business models that we've seen, the best case studies that we've just worked on. And so there's a whole library of resources that you can use and download for free that will enable you to do this. And then we try and support courses like this. We ourselves bring courses, to the market frequently that people can look at as well. So I hope in the next couple of months to have some videos up, which would give you much more detail on things that I just described, and you can go and see that. And so I'd highly recommend that. We've also got a thing called the Social Investment Toolkit. So again, if you want to just go and download sort of like precedent template documents or things like that, again, all for free, socialinvestmenttoolkit.com. It's got that up there as well. And so I would highly recommend those as resources that you can use. Ashoka itself, of course, has got all kinds of resources up on its website and in its community. So that one is tremendous. And then if people want to connect with me or with my team that provides these coaching materials and all of this, you can actually find me on Twitter. For those of you who are socially media active, I'm very active on that at markch3ng. And I sort of publish regularly on insights that we're seeing from entrepreneurs in the field, if people want to find that. And on LinkedIn, Social Innovation Circle has a very active LinkedIn group as well. So again, we publish a lot of content on that, so people can find. So please do come and find us on LinkedIn and at the website and our newsletter, and we'll you'll find a lot more sort of tools like the one that we've just done.
Thank you, Mark. It was an amazing and an incredible session. I have myself learned a lot from all the steps that you have taught, and I'm sure all our learners would have found some or the other application in the way they should be pitching correctly, on time, and in a very crisp way. So thank you so much for your time and wisdom with all that you shared with us, and all the very best for your journey ahead, Mark.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us live. And thank you for asking those very relevant questions. Thank you for your submission of Module 4 assignment. We look forward to your submission for Module 5 assignments this week. Also, we hope that you have taken a note from the course overview during Module 6, instead of a live webinar, we are hosting live Making More Health Together convention on November 11th and 12th. Please hold those dates on your calendar, and we shall soon send you the process to register for the event. Also, next week, we look forward to meeting you for our office hours. Please hold your time on 9th November at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where you can share with us your reflection and insights on a course over a meeting. It's an interactive meeting. So please do block your calendars to be with us. And until then, enjoy the course and see you soon.